Okay, we're going to go to the brown drake. This is a traditional parachute, but I fish this through the spinner fall for most of the brown drakes, green drakes, gray drakes. Frequently, and we have a whole section, I have a whole section in the book about that, is that frequently the bugs will come back, the mayflies, and they're in a spinner position, but their wings are upright, and that's a perfect opportunity to fish a parachute. Because if the wing's upright, all they're seeing is the leg and the silhouette of the wing, and you want the body, the abdomen, and the thorax to be laying down in the water, and that's what this fly does best. I'm going to tie this one with a white wing, but I also tie this with a darker wing, just a natural, or sometimes even a black wing. And I go into that in the book about the different colors of wings. Frequently you can take, when you're fishing an area that has had a lot of pressure, you can take a traditional pattern and simply change the color of the wing and get success with it when they've seen a lot of the same thing. And often a dark wing's easier to see and highlight than a white wing is, so it kind of doesn't hurt to have a little bit of both in your box. What I'm going to do here is I just started my thread, wrap back and forth just to get it set, and I left my room again a little bit more than normal, and you'll see why here in a second, to tie in, to do my hackles and everything when I'm ending. So I've got about twice as much as I would normally have for a head. Next I'm going to tie in the wing, and I'm using, again, like I just showed you, the white deer hair. I'm going to, just like with the other ones where we use deer hair, we're going to pick all this under fur out and the shorter directional hairs, and I'm going to stack this, get the tips all the same length, and again, using the hook as your gauge, just get the length of the wing and tie it in right at that head right there, and I'm going to just cinch it down enough so it just starts to flare. Okay, it's not really flaring hard. And I'm going to start wrapping back, and like I did with the caddis, I'm not going to tighten this down real tight. I'm going to go in here and I'm going to cut about a third of it out, and it gets a little bit prickly there. They're going to spray out a little bit on you, but I'm not tightening that down. Pick that last one out, and you can see with this red thread going over top of the white, I'm not really compressing that body. So you can see that there's a little bit of, and what that's doing, it's creating an air pocket inside the other hair, and that's again just developing float. If you were to cinch that really tight, you wouldn't have any float inside the fly, and you've built extra weight. I didn't tell you, but I'm using red 6/0 thread, and I use this generally on all of this, the brown drakes and the gray drakes and the green drakes. I use the same 6/0 thread, and the only differentiation I do between the fly is if I'm doing a green drake, I use gray thread, or back in Michigan where we fish a lot of Isonychia patterns, we use a light yellow thread, or not yellow but light olive, and that's what I use. The body colors are pretty much consistently the same color on all those bugs, but the segmentation is a little bit different. Next I'm going to go to the body material, and this is Mousse body material, and it's pretty critical to get good Mousse body, because if you cannot use Maine. It's where you see the color change here, where it gets dark, that's where it stops being hollow. And when you use Maine, it's mostly not hollow hair, it's solid hair, so you don't get the float you need. And just like with the deer hair, you've got to clean it. Just spin the tips in your fingers and pull all that fuzz out of there. That's what stops the fly from, and there's a lot of it in Mousse body here. When you go to the shop to buy this body, you're looking for hair that's like this, that's less than 2 inches is about ideal, and with as consistent a color as you can get. And again, we're going to stack this hair just like we did the wing, getting the tips all the same length. If you've got a lot of curve to the hair, if you tip your stacker to the side like this when you're tapping it, it'll get all the hair to roll the same direction, and you can actually build the curve that you're going to tie into this. This is pretty straight hair, so we're not going to need much of it. What I'm going to do is I'm going to go through, I don't know if you noticed what I did there, but I held one end of it and I pulled to get all the hair that wasn't the same length out of there from the butt section. And then I'm going to go to the tips. I'm going to do the same thing and make sure there aren't just a handful of straggled short hairs there, because I want it all the same when I tie this. I don't want one to poke out the side. Now I'm going to, you'll have to decide how thick you want these bodies. A little bit has to depend on how fast the water you're fishing is. Okay, now we've got to, you set this up, and you have to, this is a little tricky when you first start tying this fly, because there's not much to tell you what to judge this hair length with, because most of it is not going to be, even though it looks really long there, most of this is going to be your tail. And I'll have to describe it as I go, because I don't really have it's about 2.5 times the length of the hook where we're going to tie in at. And I'll have to describe it as I go, because I don't really have it's about 2.5 times the length of the hook. And again, you just have to keep watching this as you go, and the consistency will come when you tie a few of them. So again, we're going to go about 2.5 times the length of this, of the hook shank. And this is the trickiest part of the fly. You have to cut this hair, we're going to tie it all the way around this. You have to cut it at an angle. Okay, so it's cut at an angle going towards the back, so that the longest hairs are going to go underneath this. I just pull the wing forward and kind of slide all that hair around the hook. And then I push it right into the wing. Notice how I pushed that wing right forward? So the shortest hairs are on top. Alright, I'm going to put 2 or 3 wraps around it, and now I notice I'm going to lose a few hairs. That's just part of the drill here. We're going to lose a few, trim these few extras off here. But now you've got to go in and you've got to look to make sure that all that hair is wrapped around the hook. When you get used to tying them, it'll go around there pretty smooth. And then we're going to look at the fly, make sure the hair is encompassing all that white wing material. Then we're going to start figure eighting. Take a look underneath, make sure you're getting it, all that hook shank covered. And here's where it gets tricky. You've got to hold the wing and switch your hand, your bobbin, into your left hand. We're going to go around it once, twice. At that point we're going to cinch it down, and it should be just past the bend of the hook. I'll show you as soon as I get this. I'm going to cinch that down 3 turns, really nice and tight. Okay, at the tail. You'll see why in a second. Then I'm going to go back forward, do 1 more turn there, and I'm going to continue the figure 8. Notice I'm not pulling that down tight. I want that to be nice and airy inside there, because that's what's going to develop the float to the fly. The air trap inside there is what does it. And this is the beauty of the fly. I'm going to go underneath here, clean this up, and stand the wing up. Okay, this is what makes the fly so effective. And really, once you get how to tie that in, it's quite easy to tie. You're going to grab a side hair right here, 1, 2 hairs. If you want a 3-tail wing, alright, you can take one right out of the middle. You just pull one off the side, one off here, go in and you cut it. And those tails can never go together. If you want 3, they just can't ever go together, because that hair's, when you flared it, you've got it right there. If you've got a 3-tail fly, there you go. These are brown drake, they don't have it. So we've got a twin tail, but the key to this fly is when you look at it from the side, with the way the tails go up, they're always out of the water. And if you look at a mayfly, especially the drakes, the Isonicas, the browns, all the green drakes in the west, you'll see them sitting on the water surface, their abdomen's in, and their thorax is pushed out slightly from their legs, and their tails are almost always out of the water. So next we're going to put on the hackle. I use a little bit longer hackle, and the quality of the hackle isn't that critical for a parachute. It's not like they're sitting on the tips of the hackle. I'm going to clip that off. I generally use dyed brown grizzly hackle, but we've trashed through all of Jack's stuff and couldn't find one, so all I had with me was an olive. Same stuff, but I'd rather it was a brown dyed grizzly hackle. Although when we do the Isonychius, we use this olive. So we'll pretend this is a Isonychia with the wrong color thread. But you can take this hackle, and the beauty of this is when you're hackling with this longer wing of deer hair, is that this hair is also hollow. And if you do this right, you take your hackle, and I laid that in alongside the wing going to the eye of the hook. And I'm going to take this and I'm going to make one complete wrap around the hackle, and then watch what I do here. I'm actually going to stretch the hackle. I'm going to pull it right into the wing. I got to hold the wing, but I'm going to pull it until it tightens into it, and that's compressing that deer hair. It makes it virtually impossible for the hackle to slide off, and I'm going to go underneath it each one. But because I tightened into the wing, one, it pulls it backwards so it's more natural, and two, it gives me a pocket to wrap this hackle into. And so seldom will this hackle slide off your wing. If you were using a non-compressible hair like calf tail, then you'd have the problem of it trying to slide off. In the book there's a guy named Ted Fasiglia, who is one of the premier photographers in the world when it comes. He did all the insect shots in here, and he also has a fly design in there called the knotty parachute, which is where he does his parachute patterns with a wing material of high-vis or Z-line, and he simply puts a knot in it to keep it from sliding up over the hackle over the wing. So now you can see we've tightened that up, and I just pull all the hackle out of the way, go in and finish the head, do a whip finish underneath there. I don't know how to use a whip finish tool. I don't think they had them when I started tying, so I just kind of do it by hand there. Finish the head. Okay, now we're just going to get in here and kind of pull the hackles down, pull the wing back. We're pretty much finished here. Again, you can see that the wing's going back towards the back of the fly the way it should. The fly's going to ride on the abdomen. The hackle is really more simply to keep the fly upright. It's not really designed to float the fly. The body of this is going to, the abdomen of this is going to float the fly. It's almost impossible to sink. You can actually pull it underwater and let it pop up in front of the fish if you want to. It's that buoyant. It's almost like having a foam fly. But the real key to this fly is the fact that these tails are never going to go into the water. They're always going to sit naturally out of the water. Now, if you're going, the one thing you have to do right now, before you finish the fly, before you get done, is take some head cement and just glue this portion of the fly. And just put a little bit on the side of this fly, along the base. I could get my cement to come out of here. Okay, we'll just pretend it did it. And what that does, it keeps the teeth of the fish's teeth from cutting the thread and then having the fly unravel. That's really the only reason you need it on there. But that's the complete brown drake, and again I use this mostly for brown drakes, Isonychias, gray drakes, but I also have been tying it in the last few years down to size 18, and I'm using it pretty much throughout all the spinner falls when I find a fly with the wing straight up.